Good to go, live, we're good to go there, Jace? Very good. All right, if everybody can hear me, we have a chat window area within Vimeo here in which Jace will be doing a little bit of discussion. If you guys have any questions, he'll be answering these questions live if we can. If there's anything that he doesn't know, he can go ahead and ask me throughout the presentation, but we will have a Q&A section. So I'll just give this a few more minutes for everybody to be able to join the Vimeo link. Make sure all of your actual microphones and everything are working. So from there, we'll just double check that. So we'll give it a few more, just another minute or so. We are discussing today the M300 RTK H20T. We're going to do a live flight demonstration with my co-host and extraordinaire training manager, Jake Mackey. And he will be piloting the bird today. Again, I have Jace, who will be doing question answering as well as controlling camera and doing all the background stuff. Ryan Laney, who is one of our sales guys, definitely helpful in this respect as well, running some of the cameras. So hopefully this production goes smooth, very clean. On a live aspect, it's not like that's very challenging or hopefully no hiccups. So we'll see how this goes. Ready to roll? Okay, you want to just put in one little message to everybody there, Jace, that, again, to remind everybody in the chat window to put any questions there. Yeah. Yes. So. Okay, well, let's get this started. Hey, my name is John McBride of RMUS, Rocky Mountain Unmanned Systems. I'm here in Utah. We were blessed to have the M300 RTK as well as the H20T delivered to us from DJI to do a couple of initial tests as well as get my hands on it, my techs to get their hands on it, sales guys to understand it, to give you the most comprehensive and understanding of the unit itself. Thank you again to DJI and all the engineers and staff to allowing that to happen, because it certainly helped out getting a lot of information out there, especially with other dealers even, to get that out there and get some good discussions going. Units are arriving, they're showing up, they're starting to be shipped out from other dealers as well as us, so hopefully we have enough information. But today I wanted to specifically do a live flight demonstration. So we're going to basically talk about putting the bird in the air. We'll be discussing a little bit of the options, camera options, how to use the zoom, a number of things. We also have a dual link radio set up here so we can figure out and understand how that works, how to switch the cameras and be a gimbal controller, if you will, so a second operator. So overall, we've got a lot of neat things that we'll be doing today. We'll hold questions a little bit till the end, but please go ahead and type them into the chat area. But we'll do a couple of questions here and there, and Jace will try to help us out with that as well. Just letting you know that at the very beginning, we've already released a number of good material out there, good webinars that people have already joined and watched, and I've been answering questions like crazy as far as how this system works. But one of the things we wanted to kind of talk about again was the dual camera operator. Now that we have a secondary remote, we're going to show that today. The other one was the thermal camera specs. So a lot of the thermal camera stuff that initially coming out, we just want to remind everybody that this is not a Flir branded camera, meaning that the sensor inside is not Flir, but it's made by a different company. Not exactly sure who that is yet, but DJI has made a full package solution on the H20T that allows both thermal imagery, a wide angle, a zoom, and a laser rangefinder. So all of that into one big unit, which is pretty fantastic overall. But as far as the specs go and the thermal stuff, I wanted to clarify a few things here on the thermal. It does use a different core, so we're using a different program called the Thermal Analysis Tool, DJI Thermal Analysis Tool, which can be downloaded from DJI's website. We then take the images, single images, and put those into that thing, and we can do some analytics on the radiometric side. One of the other things about it, I did another video that showed nighttime operation that kind of blurred, if you will. I called it blurred, but what I'm going to actually refer this to is softening the pixel edges a little bit. So it's not really blurry, it's softening it a little bit so that to show that you don't have hard edges and stuff like that. I found this to be a very helpful feature as far as public safety goes, but probably not optimal for any type of inspection type use. So that's only in the digital zoom. If you actually take a picture, it's a picture of the whole image, and you can zoom in later if you wanted to and still carry that little bit harder defined pixel pitch. So anyway, a couple of things about that. Jace, did we have any comments yet? We're good?
Just a couple little small questions. We'll get to those.
Okay, excellent.
Other than that, we're
Excuse
ready
me.
to get going with the demo if you are.
Ready to get going with the demo, so let's go ahead and go outside, take a look at the M300. We do have Jake out there assisting with us doing piloting as well as setup. So we'll just go through kind of a full startup here with the M300. And after again, we get done with the overall presentation, we'll go ahead and get some questions. We're scheduled this to be about an hour, but if we go over, that's okay. I like to give as much information as I possibly can, so I'll hold my guys to being here to help us operate and keep going. So here we go. Let's go ahead and go outside.
All right, folks. So while he is doing that, we're going to take a look at just some of your quick questions real quick while they're getting set up and they're getting finished up outside. So we've got just a little bit for these. So one of the first questions we've got here is when do you foresee a mapping camera being released by DJI or third party? Honestly, right now it's a little bit too early to tell. Is it going to be a mapping platform? Where are they going to be? We just don't know yet. And like I say, as far as speculation goes, it's probably just not very useful for us at this point because there's nothing official or anything like that. So it's a little bit too early to say so whether that's going to happen at this point. Another one, does the laser rangefinder, can it be used for assisting in drone navigation, keeping constant difference from a surface or a tilted wall? It doesn't have any, as far as I know, it doesn't have any type of like a distance hold or anything like that, something that you may have seen in the other systems like an Helios or something like that. I don't believe so. However, it is rather useful when you're like in an inspection type scenario when you're going to be inspecting an object like a tower or a telephone pole or something like that. I've actually found it's really nice to have that as a piece of security to be able to say, how far actually am I from this telephone pole? Because obviously when you zoom or anything like that, your perspective can get really skewed while you're doing something like that. So having that straight up distance is actually real nice to have. Because again, it just gives you that little bit of extra security knowing that, oh, I'm actually 20 feet away from that post where I thought I was maybe 10 or 12. It's just a little bit of extra security. So I think they're about ready to go out there. So we're gonna push it to them, and then they'll take you off with their live flight demos. So we'll push it right over to them.
Okay, so we are outside. I'm with Jake, our pilot, who will be flying. We have a dual remote set up, and like I said, I wanted to discuss a little bit about how it looks overall in the screen, and as well from starting up from Pilot App. So we should be able to see Pilot App in our remote feed here. We are using one of the command view systems to actually transmit. So we're transmitting this via back to Jace, but just to show you how that works. So we're going to go into Pilot App. I just wanted to make mention that this does have the album and the HMS. Go ahead and power up, Jake. Jace. Jake. Jason Jake. So it's normal power up cycle, just like any other DJI ship. Press it once, hold it down. Once we have that happening here, we have the gimbal doing its calibration real quick. IMU doing its power up. We do want to remember that anywhere during that cycle, we don't want to touch or mess with the machine. Normal DJI operations. Once we're connected, you can see on my screen, if we take a look at my screen, I've got the M300 RTK and confirm that the Zemus H20T is communicating to the Pilot App. We then go into the manual flight here, and we have a normal checklist. like we have in the past of what we set our return to home altitude. We are flying in mode 2. If we're doing left dominant or right dominant as far as the gimbal control goes, and that means moving it on the left stick or the right stick for control. I'm going to change mine to right dominant right now. And we have a lot of other lights. We can turn on discrete mode if we wanted to right now. We can turn on the bottom lights, auxiliary lights. So just this is the normal checklist screen in which DJI has put out just to make sure before you start doing anything else with it. So let's close that. Little run around this, basically the primary flight display. So what we're looking at here is the FPV screen. The FPV screen shows us a number of things that are going on. The moving bushes, we can see that in the radar moving around. We are 2 feet, it says, from our home point, even though we haven't left anywhere yet. But as soon as we take off, we'll see it, both our altitude, we will see our speed, we can see a compass heading. We also have a new feature on here called above sea level or above your medium sea level. So we can see that 4,229 feet. Up on the top right, we have our battery conditions. We're at 85% on this set of batteries, and later we're just going to demonstrate an actual hot swap. So currently right now, looking at this screen, this is what Jake is seeing as well at the same time. And so when he's ready to actually take off, up on the top left, you can see the little drone. And if I take, this is the one thing about the dual operation, is that I can then take control of the actual bird during that time. We can also then click onto the gimbal here, and now we have the gimbal view, so the actual H20T. And when, again, requesting control for that, I can request control of the gimbal itself so that I steal it or take it from the primary pilot. So nothing again super amazing here as far as overall usage, but there are some really neat things in the primary flight display utilizing that FPV camera. So let's go ahead, Jake, let's take off and see what that looks like. So make sure everything's clear. So if you can hear it, we have beeping going on, which lets the bottom sensors of the obstacle avoidance and the landing system, all of that actually set up to warn us when it comes down to that desired amount of you're too close to something. So that is there. Why don't you climb just a little higher? Okay. Oh, Jake's resetting the warning so it doesn't go off so low. Okay. Again, on my controller, I'm looking at the primary flight display. As Jake is panning and moving around, you can see a number of things happening here on the display. We have, again, altitude. We have a bearing heading, which is pretty fantastic. One of the other things is that we have the home point. You can actually see us down there in the FPV screen. Remember, the FPV screen is fixed, but at an altitude of 50 feet, I can still see down there on the bottom. We also have the props in the view, which is really helpful for the pilot, to be honest, because then you know really how close you're getting to something, and you don't want the props to strike anything. So looks really good as far as the FPV screen. If we keep rotating around, you can see the actual home. You can see that over on the right-hand side just a little bit, how the home point is showing in virtual space where it is. And then if we make it completely disappear out of the screen, we can then still have an indication on the ship showing where the home point is. Now it's 100% behind us, and it's going around. You can see it rotating around. Other things that are neat about the primary flight control, again, is that it shows not just all of the incoming UI, but you also have an estimated amount of wind that's happening, because you can see the wind speed indicator on the bottom left. That's just below the speed, so you have wind moving directly at you, which is true as far as the breeze is going, somewhere around 4.5 miles per hour. This is a really good estimation. I mean, it's not going to be absolutely perfect because this is available in air data and whatnot to look at and post, but you can see the wind directions changing while flying around. So really cool as far as this new primary flight display. Well, the other things about it is that, again, we have the second remote running right here. So again, on the top left, we're going to jump over. Since I'm running the slave remote, I'm already programmed to be able to use the slave, and we can see that happening here, moving around on the slave. So just to demonstrate really quickly, obtaining control of the bird, which is again a new feature. I'm going to come back to my primary flight display on my FPV camera. Jake's got the same thing showing, but I'm going to hit the button right here. So now I have control of the bird. I should be able to pan it, move it, left, right, forward and back. And what it basically did is switch him to be the secondary remote operator, so he should have, once requested, gimbal control, which again, what happens there is that I'm going to open up the gimbal view. So what we're seeing here is not what we normally see. Jake is actually operating the gimbal, and this is what the pilot would see on his control. So just an FYI there. This is what the pilot sees. And from here, we go ahead and actually are capable of zooming in. So let's just go ahead and do that and show that real quick, Jake. And then I'm going to take back control of the gimbal while you take back control of the bird. So there's our zoom screen. There we go. Perfect. And again, what I'm outputting is what the actual primary, well, what your pilot would see, while Jake has a lot more other controls on his end. So go ahead and switch over to the infrared view. So there you go, infrared, and then we'll just switch one more time back to the wide. Okay, so I'm going to switch back over to me. So this is what the pilot sees when the pilot's running around. If I need to change back to my FPV screen, I still have that information, and so does Jake. But because I'm now into the FPV screen, basically the primary flight display, Jake's going to go into his primary flight display on his second remote, hit the button.
Obtained aircraft flight control.
Aircraft has been reacquired by Jake. Then I'm going to go ahead and jump over to the gimbal. I'm going to request the gimbal control up on the top left.
Companion controller obtained. Gimbal 1 control.
Once I now have the gimbal controller, now you can see that my feed is slightly different. Now I've got a lot of other things. So Jake's just going to put us where we need to be as far as piloting goes now. And I should be able to control the camera and set it up. So one of the things I want to talk about besides this, just being able to do that, let's go ahead and point this at the buildings across the street. So we're just going to rotate, and I'm going to rotate with him.
Yep, I'm actually facing that.
There you go. All right, across the street here. Hopefully nobody's doing anything activity bad. So what I'm looking at right now is my wide angle view. On the wide angle view, we have a green box showing up right in the middle of that. That green box tells me if I hit the zoom button, that's what's going to be in my scene right when I touch it. So let's do that. Zoom, and there it is with the actual how much degrees or how many times zoom I was when I moved it.
I moved too. Not bad.
If we come back out here to the regular zoom, we can see that. One cool thing about it when I move this around is that I can adjust that even while in the wide zoom. So if I want to move that smaller or bigger, I can adjust the zoom amount, so all I have to do is pop back and forth between the two views. There's the zoom, there's the wide. Back to the zoom, and back to the wide. So that if I'm actually having to follow a vehicle or a truck or anything like that, and I'm actually get them in the scene here, and I click on the zoom, if for some reason I lose them, I can get back out to the wide real quick by just touching the button and find the subject that I was following. So it's a really cool feature here that you're able to actually frame up the zoom and see it. So very, very cool. One of the other things is the IR camera. So let's jump over to the IR camera. And when you're in the IR, a couple other things that show up here. Up on the top right, we have color palettes. So I'm going to click on the color palette. And we have a number of different color palettes here on the bottom we can see. Oh, you're great. You're okay moving it around. In fact, it's fine. And we can do a gimbal unlock so that you don't mess with my movement of that. That's another feature up on the top. That's one of the more common color palettes that people have seen or used. How they look in this view. We also have isotherms, so we can turn the isotherm on.
Is that distracting? Are you good?
Oh, you're good. So this is looking at or highlighting colors in between the degrees of 98 on the high end and 64 on the low end. So we can use that, we can optimize that for basically looking for people if we know those known temperatures. So it just highlights that. So that is available. FCC, if we need to run a trigger, we just press the button to do that. And let's go ahead and point at us, because this is what I was talking about earlier in the presentation. Is that when you're looking at someone on the screen, something or someone on the screen. So there we are right there. That's good there, Jake. Perfect. And in the IR, you can see that this is pretty crisp. This is a very crisp image. I mean, there's a lot of information here that the camera is actually seeing with a number of different emissivities that are popping out. But the one thing I wanted to say is that when you go into ×2, we're just looking at the edges of the pixels. ×4, and then ×8. And what we're able to see here really well in this feed is that even though it's a slight, I wouldn't call it a blur, as I had mentioned in another video, but softening these pixels and actually having the amount of information on this is pretty absolutely amazing. So you can see clearly that we're two people, and Jake even moving around. You can see that he likely has something in his hand, even this far away, and looking at the digital zoom. So I just wanted to clarify that how awesome the actual the pixel pitch of this is that you've got smaller pixels, which basically allows for more information to be seen and give you almost greater detail. So it's a very good thing here. Over on the right, I'm going to go ahead. We have the IR selection on the top right. And we have a drop-down menu called Split. So we're going to go ahead and split it. And with the split, I think this was an earlier question on how that view looks and how close the two cameras are in representing the field of view. So we can see that moving around, very similar. Now the only thing is this is again a technology that Flir has patented, is called MSX. So we're not able to do any of that because it's not a Flir branded thermal camera, but we are able to get this side-by-side view, and I wouldn't be surprised in later versions of the Pilot or capabilities is that we'd be able to have some other type of views to compare an RGB camera with the actual Flir camera, or the thermal IR camera. So in climbing here, I'm going to move the camera over just a little bit. Like I said, it actually looks very clean. It's a really good image. We've got a lot of great information that we're able to assess. I mean, right there in the middle of the screen, the piles of rocks there, and being able to see that little bit, man, I just don't think you'd be able to see that with other cameras, is that amount of detail. So if we then go into a ×2, a ×4, and a ×8. Oh, look at that. I even made a mistake. So it's shrubbery. But it's amazing. I mean, absolutely amazing how much detail you're actually able to see while doing the zooming. So just a little bit more about that, and I'm sure, like I said, we'll have a little bit more information on some of the use cases in this scenario and how to use it. It's very true. You will not be able to have any RGB, obviously, if you split the screen and don't have enough ambient light or enough light in a space to catch basically that RGB camera view. But the thermal is just out of this world. It's absolutely amazing. Okay, so we are still showing on my screen the green box, the green zoom box, and currently I'm running the split screen between thermal and the wide view. So if we click on that, we then jump right back out. On the zoom camera, I can change that. And let's go ahead and take a look at, let's run a little bit of a, what I would call an inspection. So we're 254 feet high, and look at how well I can see this. I mean, we're only in a 10 times optical zoom. I'm going to a 20. Absolutely amazing how much detail I have in that. Take a picture of it, record it. Absolutely fantastic. So here's the other neat feature on this is just where things are and how they're located. Let's go ahead and turn on the rangefinder. Once the rangefinder is turned on, we can see basically the red reticle shows up instead of the white, and there on the left side we actually have a GPS point, an approximate altitude, and how far away the range is. We can see 296 feet away from the drone. Altitude and GPS are calculated with a number of fancy algorithms within this system. It's absolutely amazing. Jake, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I'm actually on my screen here. As a spectator, I can actually take a screenshot
Of that location. In fact, yeah, so right next to that,
on my remote.
Jake notes he can take a screenshot of what he's seeing, but let's go ahead and do that. On the side is the little clip thing, so let's clip that, and it clipped a GPS location and saved it in our crystal sky, or I'm sorry, on our smart remote.
People want to see the range, the laser.
Oh, it's on right now. Rangefinder is on. Okay, so anytime that we then move anywhere away from that, you can see altitude changes and stuff like that. It's actually pretty damn close. I mean, I'll just say, I don't know if the top of this pole is exactly, let's see, 40 feet, but I bet it's pretty damn close. 39, 40 feet. Yeah? Yeah. And we are at a height of, remember, the drone is at a height of 255 feet. So I'm oh man, just all around impressive as far as how this works. It's incredible. Okay, so how far can we go? So we're at 20 times zoom. We're just gonna look at the bird poops on top. We'll try to stay as still as possible when it comes down to this. We'll look at the insulators, we'll look at a few things. So let's go ahead and kick into 40 times zoom. There is an 80 times.
Got about 6 mile per hour wind here.
160. And 200. And here is when we start finally getting a little bit of, I wouldn't even call it instability, but it's the sensor bouncing around
6 mile per hour.
on the lens. Oh, and we're on a 6 mile per hour wind, Jake is saying. So let's minus that out, come back out. And remember, this runs to about a 23 times zoom to where you're in the optical portion of it. So optical portion, you definitely want to stay under 23 when you're doing something. But if Jake were to bring us even closer, I'm willing to bet it'll be even fancier.
You'll have to stay on target with the camera.
So
Because I'm not facing towards this.
I'm going to change my gimbal to free.
Okay, there you go. You good?
Oh, that was my recenter, and that was great. Just switch over to free mode here. Jumping around to some of our settings here, but Let's jump out to the wide view. And there we are, utilizing the wide to see where the heck I'm pointing the camera at. Rangefinder is turned on. Got me there, Jake?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
On the FPV, I can actually see a marker that you dropped.
Pin, yeah. Let me see where I put the pin here.
Maybe. Or is that where the pin is?
Well, let's do this. Let's do this and demonstrate this. So we can set a pin somewhere. Let's put one right where you're standing.
Okay.
All right, so if I put right where we're standing, up on the top left, I have a little pin drop right next to the rangefinder where you turn the rangefinder on and off. Let's do that. I then set a pin. From there, as Jake is moving around the machine, you can see the pin is basically staying in its position. This allows a couple of awesome things here. Basically, the ability to go ahead and mark a point, and if that is the point of my battery is dead and I need to start in this location, I can go ahead and mark that point, and that point is saved in the UI to come back and address whatever issue I was looking at to start again. Currently, we're running 13 minutes left. You know, it's an estimation, 13 minutes up on the top, but you can see the pin rolling around and moving around when I marked it. So if I want to mark a new point, go ahead and hold there. There's a new point I just marked. Pinpoint has been successful, and there's our new pin. So that actually maintains, and then if you keep rotating around, you can actually see that the pin shows up on our compass heading and direction. Very, very neat tool as far as using that. Okay, so the last thing I want to show before we come back down and change batteries is kind of the smart UI stuff. So go ahead and stay still there. You're good. I'm going to go to the smart track. So I'm going to go to the zoom here. I'm going to come out on the zoom just a little bit so we can see the whole field of view here. A little bit more.
You want to get a live car?
Oh, we'll get a live car in a second. So I just wanted to show how many things actually show up in a parking lot here. And none of these cars are actually moving. This is just the AI going, I think that's a car. So here we're going to go ahead and hit the Smart Track button. And there is the UI that shows all of the possible vehicles that the basically the machine learning portion of viewing can see.
There's a car coming by.
Okay, so then get down here, and if I zoom in just a little bit, that AI should pick up two people, just like it did. So really cool. What do you want to track is basically what is showing up here. What do you want to track? And if it recognizes what a vehicle looks like, recognizes what a person looks like, and if we are trying to find something live, let's see how well that works. Trying to find something live.
Like getting on the freeway.
Someone going on the freeway. Go ahead and rotate around. Okay. You're good there. You're good there.
Good go.
You're good. Hold there. Let's see if as soon as it'll pick up this. If I need to zoom in just a little bit for it to track. Okay, let's then click on that, and now I am hands off watching it track this vehicle.
You might get my leg because you're still in free mode.
Okay. Now what is it doing? It just lost the vehicle. What does it do? What does it do? What does it do? Searching for the target, searching for the target, searching for the target. So it did lose the vehicle. Yeah, behind the building. Good thing to know though, so you know that limitation of tracking, especially when you're trying to do it by hand. So let's see if we can find another one. Let's pause that. Something showing up here. Let's go ahead and click on that. Oh, that one also can't be recognized either, getting off the on-ramp. Good choice, John.
You get somebody coming down the street like from north.
I just think it's pretty fantastic how far out you can do it. And if you have to zoom in a little bit, you can to pick up vehicles. So let's hit that one. Okay, so what does this mean? From here, I'm not touching anything, but I'm going to zoom out a little bit or zoom in a little bit. I have that control to do that. Is to zoom out or zoom in manually. So let's see what happens when it gets behind the building again, because we're going to lose it.
actually see what you're tracking.
Oh, it actually, that view actually kept it. Oh, jumped to a different vehicle. So again, limitations, slight limitations when it comes down to something moving quickly and fast.
So on the FPV,
Yeah.
I can see your tracking.
You can see the tracking, where it's going on the tracking on the FPV primary flight display. That's pretty sweet. Well, let's pause that. So as far as anything moving fast or vehicles moving fast, and we're staying stationary. That's the other thing, is that we're staying stationary with the basically tracking feature here. If you were to move along with it, you probably have a better success of trying to keep it in the view during the whole time. So
We're not very high. We're only 100 feet.
100 feet in the air. Yeah. Okay. Well, I think I've got, let's see, we talked about the primary flight display. We talked about the obstacle avoidance a little bit. So we have that on the settings here. Nothing showing up in our radar right now as far as obstacle avoidance because there's nothing near us. But let's go ahead and bring this down because we're going to get ready to land here in a minute.
Even on the map, it shows the object here.
What about it?
The thermal and RGB, Jake just said talk about it.
Oh, we just did that.
Okay.
Yeah, well, we can see that. We can see we just jumped back here to the split view. And with the split view, talking about that, we just had a comment from one of our viewers here to talk a little bit about this, and again, how the split view looks. This is putting the side-by-side, left and right. If I zoom in, I'm not doing any zoom control optically. I'm only doing zoom digitally. We talked about that. Okay.
So what's really neat too is when you were tracking, it actually showed up on the map.
It shows what you're tracking.
Yeah, it showed the object moving.
That's absolutely amazing. We're going to show that here in a second. So let's go ahead and bring this down. But what we wanted to show, Jake, real quick, is that we're going to get close enough that the obstacle avoidance is going to see the building. It'll start giving us audible alarms. It should see the pole as soon as you get close to it. And I just wanted to kind of discuss what it actually sees when we're doing it. And again, everybody kind of pay attention to the obstacle avoidance part. It's down there on the bottom. See, now we've got green coming, so go ahead and hold there. So with all the green, we can see that the green part is telling us something is near. There's our low battery warning. And we can see it all showing up as Jake is rotating around. If I change it over to the FPV screen, that's probably a better view to see what is showing up in front. Green means I'm still able to move. So if I go ahead and keep moving, it's not far enough, and you can go ahead and put the bird back down, Jake. And we'll look at the obstacle avoidance. Now we've got red showing up, and red, that is a no-go, that it's not going to allow you to hit something if it senses it. It sees all the bushes and all the trees and everything else here. Awesome. Way to go, Pad. All right, let's just do a quick hot swap. Let's jump over to camera number 2 here. And from here, we'll get back up in there, and then I just wanted to show exactly what that looks like. So Jake has actually got, I'm gonna hand you this radio there, Jake, just so that we can see what it looks like on the battery page. So when we jump back over.
I'll change the battery.
Oh, okay, Jake will change the battery.
Sorry about that. Take your gimbal control.
So up on the top right, and also doing this battery exchange. Once we unclick the battery lock, Jake's unclicked it, and it says it cannot take off, meaning that that is not turned to the appropriate position to allow a takeoff. It's still saying it's not able to take off. Once removing that, let's jump back over to the actual feed on the drone. And from there, you can see the battery voltage is NA, low voltage because we're doing the hot swap. The bird is still turned on. I still have full view and use of the bird here. Yeah, FPV, we got the RFPV. So then we're gonna put in our good battery. And we'll watch the screen here. We then get an output voltage that says it's different, which totally makes sense because it's a full battery. Then Jake's gonna pull the good battery out, or the bad battery, on the right side. Go ahead and put in the good battery on the right side. And you see it's giving us all these warnings and everything else that while doing that, that makes sense. And then finally, closing the actual locking mechanism allows us to basically do the or to take off again. So just keep that in mind. I don't know if you can literally screw this up any, you know. It's pretty much dummy proof. So I don't think you can mess that up anyway. So there's a basically showing you how to do a hot swap. Really good. So just wanted to check with Jace and see if he had any further questions right now, and we'll head back in. So if there's anything else to show, we can definitely do that here. Jake will be ready to go as far as that. So.
Do a couple questions here. Here we go. All right, we're live here. You want to burn through a couple questions here real quick? All right. We'll pull you up right here. Let me get you.
Take this from Jake. Thank you again for your assistance there. That actually worked out really well.
All right, so we're going to do kind of some rapid fire questions here real quick. Just some real quick answers. Does the M300 have detect and avoid capability? As the FAA says it's necessary for beyond visual line of sight, can the drone detect if a moving aircraft is in front of it and then take avoidance action?
That's a negative. So that's a really quick rapid fire question. Are you able to see things on the screen? Yes. Are you able to get the ADS-B in? Yes. It shows up on the map? Yes. It gives you warnings? Yes. But it does not try to deter its flight whatsoever. Not at this time. I don't know if that's going to be something in the future or not.
Right. So. Okay. Let's see. We already talked about the laser and drone navigation. Mm-hmm. Are the compass data written on images XF file?
Yes, they are, and they always have been. So the direction is there. Gimbal direction and where it's facing as far as IMU is there. RTK data is there, so yes, there's a number of good things. So we should have GPS as well, yes.
Okay. People, I believe I understand this question correctly, and I apologize for that, but they want to know, I believe what they're asking is they want to know if the laser will tell you the horizontal distance between objects. So the drone is in the air, it's pointing, the rangefinder is pointing at you. Will it tell you that horizontal distance? That top leg of the triangle?
No. So if we do understand this question correctly, and again,
I believe I do.
You can get a hold of us if we're not answering it correctly. So basically the way Jace has explained this to me is if the drone is out and we have a laser distance, that's this portion of the triangle, right? This portion that has an actual number, we'll just call it 100 feet. And this portion is an estimation on how far that distance is. I don't think I'd be able to pinpoint except to know where the drone position is in a GPS location. So just a quick rapid fire, I don't think it's going to work that way to know how far away it is, other than how far away that portion is pointing at whatever it is from the drone. That being said, though, we did see that height estimation from the rangefinder when you were on the top of that pole, and that was awesome. It's a good discussion there. Where does that actual height come from? Where does the algorithm come from to figure out the height of the top of the pole? So it does know a few things when it goes to take off. It knows where its starting point is at the 0 point. It actually has an MSL measurement. So in this case, we were like 4,233 feet. From that takeoff point, it calculates a number of things to know exactly how high a point is in a 3D space. So would I 100% count on that? Yeah, it could be a little bit kind of tough to count on that 110%, but the fact that it gets pretty close, I mean, that was 40, it was coming up 40 feet, wasn't it, Jace?
Yeah.
And I would say that pole is about 40 feet. So, I mean, pretty cool.
All right.
Any other questions?
Yep, we've got more here. Let me try and find our next one.
You can order my back, who JT says, because of your mic.
Oh, is it? Oh, crap. Well,
I'll
mute myself then. Feedback, bummer. Okay, do both controllers show the same display?
Do both controllers show the same display? So, as we had done in the demonstration, the primary pilot has one view, the primary flight display from the FPV camera, and then a more clean view that doesn't have the controls of zoom, infrared, camera control stuff. It's a much cleaner view when you're looking at the pilot's view. From obviously the secondary remote, you're going to have camera control options there. So again, zooming, that button is there since the other controller does not have that. So just to answer that question on a rapid question, they are different, but you can, just because of the control capability. Who's in control? That's really all it's about, on what shows up on what screen.
All right. Next question here, and I can answer this one if I may be so bold. Is the H20T good for 3D mapping of vehicle accidents? It's a two-part question. One, can it be done? Yes, technically yes. Two, is it the ideal tool for that type of situation? No. Typically, kind of our recommendation for something like that, especially for a traffic accident where you're talking about buildings and power poles and obstacles, a smaller platform is typically preferred. Yeah. I would say you'd probably agree with that. A smaller platform for that type of thing, because you're going to get a similar result. And if you really want to get your accuracy and that kind of stuff and be able to operate in that tight space, the recommendation is the Phantom 4 RTK. It's made as that mapping platform, as a mapping platform. So that would be our recommendation for that.
But as far as like capable taking images, Jace, this is capable. I mean, I went ahead and did basically a mission on the pilot app, and did a mission, and that mission collected data from the 12 megapixel wide camera. I was flying at around 200 to 250 feet, somewhere around there, and the data set didn't look terrible. But
it looked pretty good.
It looked pretty good. I'm going to say it wasn't. Is it optimized for that type of mapping? Not optimized for very accurate stuff, but overall, can you set up a map and do something? Sure. I mean, it's not going to keep you from doing it, because it is actually there if you wanted to. Other apps that do stuff that control the camera and drone in a certain way, that's again what Jace is referring to, is to having a little bit smaller platform certainly helps out, maybe a little bit better sensor.
Operating in a tight space.
Tight space operation.
And like I say, if you're really talking about that accuracy, the data for 3D map, the point is that it can be used.
It could be used.
It's not
just
the optimal.
It's just
tool
optimized.
So
all right,
it
cool.
can be done, but it's not ideal.
Very good. But I'm sure I'm going to get some more data sets of that stuff out there so that people can see a little bit better and how that works out. So.
Gotcha. Here we got another one. Let's see. Would Smart Track work better in thermal?
Ooh. So that's definitely a John McBride question. Smart Track does not work with thermal at all on this setup. So there is no smart tracking. If you are in RGB zoom and have the smart tracking turned on, it will follow in thermal. So you could switch over while the RGB camera is still following or tracking something. But there is no, if you stay in the thermal view, there actually is no smart track buttons to push to actually do like thermal tracking on the XT2 or heat tracking. That's not available on the thermal side. So if you have good RGB, it wants to track it, you're going to get a much wider view. You can basically still jump over to the thermal view, digitally zoom while it's still tracking, but it's using that RGB side of the zoom camera to do that.
Okay. And we'll go with another question here. Is there a picture-in-picture overlay like the XT2?
Good question.
A good question. A picture-in-picture overlay. No, there is not. Right now, it's just a side-by-side view. The other things that were happening with the XT2, obviously, is that you could pick where the picture-in-picture was going to go. You could do a side-by-side, and then you can embed basically thermal with a perfect alignment, if you will, to see the outside versus the inside. I don't know if those features will be coming down the pipeline as far as DJI development. It would make sense if it does, but currently it's just a side-by-side view.
I've got another one here that I can answer very quickly. Does the controller operate on a Crystal Sky battery? Yes, it does. It also has an internal battery, so the secondary Crystal Sky battery is optional. You do still have an internal battery. And Jake can answer this question maybe real quick. Jake, what was the flight time for the flight we just did? Hold on just a minute.
I don't know if it still have that.
You know what, it might not have that telemetry data. We might have to go in later to look at the flight data because we changed the battery.
25 minutes.
Oh, 25 minutes.
Yes.
Okay, 25 minutes, and we're in a...
80%, I believe, at the beginning.
Yeah, so we weren't quite at a full battery, and we were looking at 25 minutes. Here, this one will be for you, John. Is altitude recorded in the .srt file?
Okay, so the SRT, a lot of people use with the SRT files and the way that they use it does have some congruency on how you would use it in cinema and other things. I know that there's been some people who have taken the SRT information, recreated videos or stuff that was embedded on or has a separate file. I'm 100% not positive, unfortunately, what is still retained there, if it's there, and what it is. So I don't have a perfect answer for that one, except to let's make a note there, Jace, that's something that we'll have to figure it out and address. Yeah, so I haven't used the SRT file whatsoever, or even tried to mess with it off of this new sensor. So we'll get back with that question. I think that's a really good one to know.
Okay. All right, and then coming back, we'll do another one. What do we know about the losing prop/motor algorithm?
Okay, one of my all-time favorite questions. What happens if you lose a prop on a quad? Well, you're pretty much DOA. On all designs and all quad designs, you lose one rotor, this machine is not going to fly. That is basically it, unless they have the basic flight algorithm to handle that. What is going to happen though, and this is, as far as the physics go, you lose basically the thrust of this motor, and the machine will then drop. Now that we've lost that thrust, we are likely, which there is actually a video demonstration of this, going to start doing a very rapid yaw motion. From there was actually a really cool flight mode in the early NASA and Wukong systems called, correct me if I'm wrong here, Lance, a really cool mode that kept where orientation mode, control mode, it had a mode that basically kept the front of the ship always the front of the ship, regardless of what you did left and right on the right stick. Can't remember? Okay. It was a cool mode programmed in there. So I would assume that this has something very similar. As she starts going into a continuous yaw, that you're still able to push on the right stick and it goes to the right. Push on the left stick, it goes to the left. As soon as I can get an authorization to basically blow up a prop and see how that works from our awesome CEO, JT, we'll do that test. But one thing to keep in mind, this is likely very much payload dependent. If it's really heavy, got stuff on it, 3 cameras, extra stuff, we're probably going to run into a very complicated, this being able to handle that. So I would say it's great for knowing that you can do it, but still, even if you're close to something and whack, who knows what direction the bird is going to start flying right now. You could end up hitting a telephone pole still. You could end up still hitting a building because it's out of control. That's the best way to say it. So hopefully we can do that test, right, Lance? Yeah, he's shaking his head. Oh, yeah.
All right, coming to some of our other questions, one of which I can answer really quickly. Were we using the base station, the RTK base station, during the presentation? No, we were not.
Okay, so I did want to talk a little bit about that a little bit. Did want to talk a little bit about the base station and how operation of that's going to go. So we basically do have a base station sitting behind us. My extraordinaire Lance technician went ahead and updated everything in here to actually work so that the Matrice base station works with the M300 in a mode, the M210 RTK, the Phantom RTK, and it's possible to then use it as a roamer and then a standalone. So we've got a couple of different modes that are new in this firmware update that will work. How that information is transposed into the H20, unconfirmed, because the H20 again is not really optimized for mapping. So I'm not sure if that's going to help you at all. But as far as flying the machine, 110%. Like that, the altitude holds, the directions, the precision flying, if you will, absolutely. That thing works absolutely fantastic. How and when we're going to actually see a mapping camera that then has RTK data, and with some people they're like, as long as it's got RTK, it's going to work. Well, in order for RTK to work, you have to have the ground station sitting on a point, or you have to have connections to cores or in-trip live while that's happening. So there can be a number of things that really doesn't say that it's going to work well. You bringing the bird back to me? Excellent. Thank you, Ryan. If we wanted to talk about anything else physically on the bird, you know,
now is the time to ask
fantastic.
those
Now is the
questions.
time. Yep.
All right, a couple more questions here. Let's see. Can you take a picture when we zoom and send that picture on a real-time basis through 5G or 4G? So I think, can I take a picture and then send it off right away with like an LTE connectivity?
Can you share? I've not tried to do that yet. So I could definitely see this as being a public safety question. If the features are not quite there in that respect, I mean, I hope that they would possibly show up. But overall, I'm not positive if you can remotely send anything like that. I know that here, this is actually pretty cool. You can get into a browser on the actual smart controller. From the browser, you can actually upload something from here as long as you have a Wi-Fi connection. You can upload, save the file, save it somewhere, and put it in the browser. But I don't know how well that would work to try and do a point-to-point transfer, you know. So I don't know about that yet. We'll look into that one as well. Take note, Jace.
All right, I got another one. How do the H20T specs stack up against the XT2?
Ooh. Okay, so without causing too many problems between Flir,
It's a hard question.
it's a very difficult question because the XT2 is not even close to this thing. And I don't say it in a thermal respect. I'm talking about this whole unit is not even close to what an XT2 or an XT is. If you're looking at
comparison.
it's really not. I mean, they're two different things. It's like saying I have a X4 and compare it to an X7. They're totally made for different things. So hate to say that, but overall thermal specs, let's just do those. 17 pixel pitch on an XT2, and that's the same between a 336 and a 640. 12 pixel pitch on these, which basically tightens up the pixels to be slightly smaller. As I had done earlier in the flight, that gives more pixels in a space and area that are tightly packed to be able to see a bit more definition. Since the XT2, and this is a very general question as far as, again, comparison, XT2 comes in a number of flavors on the lenses. This only has one, 13.5. So when you run a 13.5 with a 12 pixel pitch and a 13 millimeter XT2, both the same resolution, 640 by 512, because of the size of pixel pitch, you're going to lose a percentage of the viewing screen. About 30% is basically the calculation here. Because the pixel sensor is smaller on the HT20 versus a little bit bigger sensor, same lens, you're going to have a smaller viewing space. And it's not the space itself, you just lose that ability to see as wide as the other one can, just because of the size of the pixels. But there's the bonus there is actually having tighter pixels, seeing better definition. I get a little bit closer to something and I have more information in a space to get analytics off of it. So if I'm doing any type of thermal analytics, you know. So XT2 has a fixed lens on the other side that is all the same. So that's the same lens, the same field of view, and the same sensor on all of the XT2s. But again, this has two different lenses on the front, and it's got the fancy rangefinder on there. So it's really hard to compare them.
It's a difficult comparison. To me, it's like saying, can you compare my pickup truck to a semi truck?
Yeah.
It's similar in a lot of respects, but they're just two different tools made for two different purposes by two different people. It's just, it's a tough comparison. That's a really hard comparison.
What's our next one?
We're getting close to all of our questions here. Maximum height altitude, or maximum altitude it can fly. I don't think we know that off the top of our head. Those specs should be on the DJI website, like a maximum ceiling altitude. So look on DJI.com. They should have that spec there. I can say, like if you saw from the demo, we're at 4,000 feet. Haven't had any issues for what it's worth. Let me see. Additional RMUS position lights. I don't think we've answered this question yet.
Well, we did. Let's talk about the LEDs real quick, and the LEDs that actually come with the bird. So just like the M210, it's got integrated LEDs on the top and on the bottom. There are no other LEDs that are super bright enough to hit the FAA specs. We went ahead at RMUS and did a light kit that addresses that problem if you need to for navigation reasons, red and green. We can definitely make kits like this later, but we don't have anything specifically built out quite yet for this one. Waiting for my Lance extraordinaire to come up with something there. So, but any other of the additional lighting, one of the things about it is it does have an upward face light, two LEDs that shine pretty bright going up, and then there's additionally two on the bottom for the lighting space, just like the M2E, to light an area up. So they're pretty darn bright though. I think we did a test there, Jace, when we were out at the field to, you know, you can get, it's not like you can get up at two, it's not a spotlight, but I think we were about 30 feet in the air and we could definitely see things on the ground, and, you know, if you dropped your pen or pencil, you could probably find it. So.
Maximum operation altitude according to the DJI website.
Oh, hold on just a moment.
So max altitude according to the DJI website is?
With the optional propellers, 22,965 feet.
22,965 feet.
Yes.
Well, when there's a car crash on Mount Everest,
yes,
you'll be able to do
you can go get it. 22,000 MSL.
Wow. Yeah. Let's see. I think there's another
with the high
Optional propellers, yes.
with the yeah.
With the optional propeller.
Yep. Got it.
Without them, it's 16,400.
That's a good number. Go ahead.
Again,
16,404
with the standard props.
with standard props.
Okay.
Not fully loaded.
Not fully loaded. Okay.
Yeah.
let's see here. Next couple questions. A question that I don't think we have an answer to, unless you have one, John. LTE available out of China. I think we just haven't had an opportunity to test that yet.
Yeah. So
you know, it is what it is.
Interesting thing if you pop it to me. So on the bottom of the remote, this isn't just a conversion box. Oh, that's fine. On the bottom of the box here, it's not just a conversion for the Crystal Sky. There's actually a dongle spot for it. If I can get this off. So we have a dongle connection inside here to run LTE. Unconfirmed exactly what that will report. That's number one. Number two, if you're using the ground station, also another dongle spot to put in so you can add a dongle. And then lastly is that on the bottom of the machine, there's going to be a spot for a dongle down on the bottom. Whether that meets or even is going to be available for any remote ID requirements, I don't know, but that's basically what this port and what this plate would be, is for some level of a dongle or information. So there's 3 places in the RTK system that dongles and SIM cards can go. But how we're utilizing them, not sure yet.
Not a clue.
Yeah.
All right, ready for next?
Yep.
All right, let's see. Let me go down the list here a little bit more. Is it mandatory to use both controllers to use the M300? Short answer, no. And is there any difference between the Slave and the Master? They are identical.
Identical.
Let's see here. Surface ceiling. Someone helped us out with the surface ceiling, so thank you for that, John Reeves. Let's see. Is SD card storage only on the controller? How does that work for large image/video files? So give us a little more update on the file structure, how that records, and how about talk about the recording on the smart remote itself?
Sure. Okay, here we go. Okay, a little bit about SD cards and where they can go, where you're storing them. So the one thing is that all of the designs are no longer doing SD cards inside of the bird, so you're not trying to get them out of the bird. All of the available payloads that DJI makes, XT2, the Z30, and the HT20 have their own SD cards inside the cameras. On the remote, though, you do have an HDMI output as well as an SD card input. So you can put an SD card in here, save files, save whatever screenshots, any of your screen recording or screen grabs are then saved onto here, which then you can put onto the SD card and share it as you will. The one thing is, since we're powered off, and I don't know, it is a little tight here to try to get this particular one out. As Jason and I experienced in the middle of the night, it is pretty tight to try to remove this SD card. It is down there pretty deep as far as getting out of there, so you want to be very careful with that. As far as the file types, when I take one picture, it makes 3 files. So one from the zoom, one from the thermal, and one from the in pictures. When I do video,
videos.
yeah. So images, I get three files: IR, zoom, and the zoom is at the zoom of when you were zoomed in at that time, and then the wide view, and that's all coming from this sensor. Then, if you do video, kind of a really cool thing that we'd figured out, right, Jace, is that on video you have video when recording video, you have video coming from the zoom camera, the wide camera, the thermal camera individually. But then you have a 4th file there called screen. And the screen is what is showing up on the screen that's actually recorded on this card. Pretty amazing.
We showed that a little bit on the webinar last week.
We did show that on the webinar. Yeah, so the screen view, again, is if I switch back and forth, if I go to split screen, that is being recorded in. Do you remember the specs on that one, Jace?
It shows you what
recorded,
you're doing live.
What is live coming through?
Yeah, what is live coming through? And
what is it? Transmitting live, basically.
1080p, yeah, basically.
And it's coming in at 1080p.
What camera am I looking at right now?
Yeah, so it gets a little confusing to be, for the most part. It's a lot of data, a lot of cards. Of course, that means people are going to do what? Rush out and buy 128s and 256 cards and other things like that. Please check specs online on how that's going to work. And what comes with this one is a 64 gig card. Lance, did you have something to add?
It'll actually give you a warning if the card is not compatible.
A warning if the card is not compatible. Because we've run into that, I don't even know how many times, Lance. Yeah, that's probably one of our highest troubleshooting problems is card choices.
Yeah, I had one in the other day that it prompted me right away that it wasn't going to work. And I had to change it to a higher class.
In this one. Okay, excellent. So just make sure you're buying the appropriate cards from Lance, who is always doing troubleshooting and trying to figure out problems. And that's one of his biggest problems is people just picking a card, throwing it in there and going, my M2E doesn't record anything, it's not saved anything, it's not writing anything. That's a problem. But
if I may, just a little addition to that, the big thing with this, because it's so much data, is write speed. Write speed, write speed, write speed. Have a fast write speed. That's going to be the way, you know, you're to be able to continue recording these files. Is you're going to hit a wall with your write speed. If your SD card isn't fast enough to be able to write that data and think you've got 2 4K feeds as well as the 640p feed, which isn't that big, and your screen record in 1080p. So 2 4Ks, a 1080p, potentially 2 4Ks, a 1080p, and a thermal image. That's a lot of data coming in all at once. So pay attention to your write speeds. Make sure you're getting good cards. And as a personal recommendation, this is me, go with the 64 gig cards. They're really solid. They're not stretching the limits of the storage. Just get a lot of fast 64 gig cards as opposed to fewer 128 gig cards.
Excellent.
So.
Excellent.
And then let's see, we've got just a couple more questions. If we use M300 for inspection of transmission lines, does it jam the RTK signals?
One more time?
It's a little bit.
Reread that one to me.
If we use the M300 for inspection of transmission lines, I think he's saying, does the transmission line jam RTK signals? Does it?
Okay.
Does it mess with your?
This is really good general knowledge as far as overall operation, because there's a lot of things where there's some major misconceptions about what RTK, when flying near EMI, actually what does that mean? So it's designed for EMI issues, electronic magnetic interference. Magnetic, meaning this: the compass doesn't get screwed up. If you turn over 100% RTK, we have a triangulation between three things happening to then quicker and faster that the ship is responding to your inputs, because it's got a triangulation happening instead of relying on the barometer, the compass, and GPS. And those are not very precise instruments as far as that goes in the flight controls. When you turn on RTK, that's why you're doing that near transmission lines. What is still susceptible though? Well, you can still knock out GPS. If you fly underneath the line, that is a signal transmission coming from the sky, a signal that's being received. It's very possible if you go under a high power transmission line, you'll lose GPS. Very possible. The other one is the control, which is different than RTK information transmitting. You can still lose RC control from the antennas and have that disabled or stop communicating, which then turns into what? Hopefully a return to home, because it's not talking to the remote. So just to clarify a few things on that. Most people are like, if I've got RTK, I should be able to do this, 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 this. And I'm like, no, it doesn't, no. Can't do bridge inspections underneath a bridge if the GPS is not connected in RTK. You cannot start with RTK, then fly into a building and try to do an inspection or look at inside, because again, you've lost this. This guy cannot be inside of the building and the bird outside of the building, because this has to have GPS. So there's a number of things that people get a little bit confused about RTK itself, and especially when it comes down to the data. Like, what is there? How do I use it? I have to have RTK. It really depends on your deliverable, 110%. So you can still be very susceptible to RC dropouts when flying around high voltage transmission lines. So just be cautious and careful. My recommendation is actually not to fly on the other side of the lines, but to stay on the same side when communicating. And even during our handoff feature that we just did, even the pilots staying on the one side if they can. So.
Okay.
Going on another one here, is it possible to use third-party apps like Lychee for waypoint missions?
Okay, so I don't think we've got them yet, Lance. Is the actual bracket that fits to hold the secondary device? Are we still waiting on those? Okay, but we can do basically a hard test of connecting, which I already did on Drone Deploy. Drone Deploy did not see yet that interface, but as soon as I plug in the USB on the top and plug in my iPad, that'll be a separate piece here that's going to be on top. That is now controlling the bird, and you lose this down here. You cannot run both of them at the same time. So when an app is connected externally to the smart remote, this then protocols that app to run first rather than the one that's on the ship. So just an FYI. But you can possibly put other third-party apps. I mean, people have asked this a million times. Jace, can I put a third-party app on the Crystal or on the Crystal Sky or the smart remote? And they have done it. We've put some apps that work, and they work okay, downloading an APK file, but not all the time does it work well. We have AirData. We did already install AirData on ours. That is a third-party app, pulls information, dumps it to the server, but it does work. But the next part is to see. Yeah, the next part is to see, and again, to make sure that the app itself is controllable. A third party. What this means is that it doesn't matter what third party it is. It's on your iPad. So if you're using it, you should be able to use it. We will confirm and test that though.
That's going to be a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, and that's Lance's home. That will also depend on the developer.
Yeah,
110%. Is it compatible with the smart remote?
Sure.
So
Lance, that's your next homework assignment.
All right, I think we're up to our last question.
here, so can we post the files from the show? Did you guys record that flight? I don't think we recorded that.
That's Lance's next homework assignment. You have a lot of homework. I'm just saying that, Lance and Jake can do a couple more flights and get a couple more data collections, but I don't know if we record it.
As well.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
You'll be able to view it later.
Excellent. Well, how far are we into this?
Oh, an hour and 16 minutes.
Oh, that's not bad. I was, you know, as far as answering questions and trying to get as much information out there, making notes of the ones that we don't know. That's super helpful for us, and as well giving input and feedback to both ARMUS as well as DJI on new developments or possibilities. I would almost dare say that this ship is bad A. I mean, it's pretty incredible.
We
It's,
noticed additional things just during the live flight demo today.
Yeah.
We're still learning things about it.
Yeah.
We've gone pretty deep at this point.
yeah. So what it's going to do, and this is the only downfall of having so many awesome features, so many awesome capabilities, so many pinpointing, rangefinder, zoom camera, thing sees its home point, tells you how high things are, where things. That's more in the cockpit, man.
Yeah.
More things to look at, more buttons to push, more features to mess with, which again will then complicate the usage of it when it comes down to, I get it up in the air now. Get it up in the air now.
Yeah.
So I can see when we do any public safety training, especially with the Z30, and that's only the one sensor, the Z30, that can be very complicated to try and maintain tracking somebody or even watching something, and then moving the drone, then moving the camera, then, wait a minute, now it's telling me my range. How far away is the guy? We should know that because it says that. I would just say this is going to take a bit of practice on the training side to do real case scenarios. How long does it take to really get it deployed? I mean, how long does it really take? So it's important stuff to be able to train and be very proficient with the usage of this one.
And that being said as well, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, you can do a simplified HUD primary flight display interface.
Mm-hmm.
You can take away a lot of those sensors, that extra telemetry and stuff like that, to be able to get a clean view.
Well,
is that correct?
You're only going to be able to output a clean view. So that's the only thing we didn't do during the live demonstration is that we didn't output from the HDMI. That's coming from the smart controller HDMI, is that you can have a completely clean output to a command center or to another screen. So it doesn't have all that information. Yes, but you just keep that in mind. That likely is still going to all show up here. I mean, it does. You can't remove the compass and everything else.
Okay.
That's just your output, Jay. Yep, that's just your output of the HDMI. So. Anything else?
I believe that's all the questions we have. Just people asking when. Oh, well, have you realized any use cases the M300 can do that nothing else can?
What can the M300 do that nothing else can do? I think I just went through like 20.
A lot of it is what can't it do, and
it's a
unless
ship.
they're
You know,
straight up
when you're talking just about a ship, set of batteries, set of props, RTK even. This portion is in development is not really like, oh my God. It's another ship. It's got a lot of sensors on it. The FPV camera is probably the coolest thing on the front of this, is that it has that ability to show you the altitude, the attitude, all of that information coming on this camera, you know, and fixed. I do like that.
a lot of the stuff is in the payload.
A lot of these cool features that has actually the software and the hardware embedded inside to handle this guy is really here. I'm just saying.
You're not going to get the rangefinder if you put an XD2 on.
No.
You're not going to get that extra stuff.
Nope.
You'll have your
And-
obstacle avoidance and
and
that
it's-
kind of thing. But
You brought up a good point there, Jace. Dear God, that just with this sensor, you have a lot to do. Boy, let's make it even funner and put 2 on there and put a third on there and have everybody wondering what the heck jumping around. Oy.
haven't had a chance to put an XD2
yeah.
and an H20T on there at the same time yet.
We'll see how it all turns out and how well people can just manage all of that and all the pieces and all the parts and you know. But just to answer that question, it's an extremely awesome machine.
A little addition to that question, you said business use cases is what I was referring to.
Oh, so like specific business use cases.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what kind of business use case can you use this? I mean, hand off for inspection. Jake says that's a fantastic one. Being able to be downrange just a little bit, you know, and then move bunny hopping both your people, keeping control of the bird. This does have a pretty good overall flight time, so I don't see that being a bad thing. One thing not even just on the business side, but if we were doing inspection of high transmission power lines, is that you could literally have it hand off, land, hot swap batteries, and then just from the other pilot take off and go again. I mean, this continuous operation, I mean, we're not talking just flight battery operation, like how long does it fly? You can literally, just between simple landings, and we did that with Jake earlier as a hot swap, it just takes, 30 seconds basically to unlock, pull the battery, put it in, put the other one in. It's quick. So you can just keep moving along like that in that.
I believe they set up to 5 remotes to be able to bunny hop between.
So
Am I wrong?
I believe that was 5 remotes,
I believe it was.
but until I pull more out and find out how many we
don't
can
know
bunny hop or bind to, it currently only shows 2 frequencies right now. So I don't know about that one.
Because we only have 2 remotes.
Yeah.
Could be a number of things we don't know yet.
So as far as just inspection, thermal imagery, zoom imagery, there's a lot of stuff there. How you then organize all of your folders of information, because there is a lot of it coming from just this sensor alone, just this one alone.
A good file structure in place.
A lot of stuff. So, do we have anything else, Jace?
No, I think that was the last. I think that was the last of our questions. If we missed any, I sincerely apologize.
Well, I think we are transmitting this on Facebook Live as well, so I'm hoping that we don't have a crap ton of. We could have a whole slew of questions coming on Facebook as well.
Yes,
that I hope to answer. I can probably answer those individually as well.
We'll have to circle back.
Okay, excellent.
Because I didn't even have. Oh, yep, it does show that we're live. Let's see here. I'm not sure what we've got in the way of questions.
Oh boy,
or anything like
comments.
Oh my gosh, yeah. When will RMUS... Here, let's go really true
Okay,
rapid fire.
hot
Are you
shot
ready for this?
questions. Here we go.
Lightning round rapid fire. When will RMUS offer a training course for the M300?
When will we operate a training course for the M300? Well, between Jake and I and creating any type of new curriculum does take us a little time. Again, we want to make sure all the features and capabilities are there. They always move forward, but we're probably looking at least another 2 months before we really start to offer a comprehensive training on this one.
Okay. Next, rapid fire. Can thermal images be processed with Flir software?
Can
Tools.
thermal images be processed with Flir Tools? That is a negative. The file type is different. They instead have the DJI thermal analysis tool, which can be downloaded underneath this payload. If you go find it on the website, there's the software there. Also, it's only for Windows.
Okay.
And it's free.
Let's see. Sorry, trying to flip through here. Is the landing gear always down while flying?
Landing gear is always down when flying. There's no way to retract those or anything like that. But the pilot control modes can actually optimize not getting the thing in the view. So just by rotating around and working with actually a good pilot, you can actually be pretty good about not worrying about the legs.
Yep. Can you zoom in the tower on the highway? Sorry, a little late.
Oh, yeah, apologize.
Can it do a flip?
I'm guessing that was Alvin. Was that Alvin?
Yes, it was.
It was Alvin. Alvin always asks me, can I do a flip on my drone stuff?
We kind of covered this.
Love you, Alvin.
We kind of covered this question, XT2 versus H20T. We kind of covered that. We talked about that, resolution, that kind of stuff. Have you performed any tests with LRF while in high humidity or inclement weather accuracy loss?
Any type of high humidity or anything like that, I'm going to give that over to basically other locations that have been testing the machines. Now again, once again, we're getting units out there. I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of feedback, or we're going to get some information of different environments that these fly in. I always have to remind people I'm in Utah. 4600 AGL, or I'm sorry, 4600 MSL. We have 5,000 foot mountains behind us, so I can do a lot of high altitude testing, but when it comes to humidity, we just don't have that. So, yeah, we are desert.
I think, let me jump back to Facebook real quick. It seems like there was one. Oh, the other one, JT wanted me.
About here. This just popped up. Know too that we're expanding a lot. You probably noticed a big difference with this live stream. Kind of taking it to the next level here. One of the things we're planning on and probably going to be able to implement in the not too distant future is virtual training. Well, once you receive your ship, we'll have our ship here and we'll be able to do a really pretty comprehensive virtual training. Obviously, with the coronavirus stuff and all that kind of stuff going on, people are wary of travel. So we're really kind of trying to take that to the next level to be able to continue to bring you guys training so that we can keep you going and keep you competent in your platforms. For sure.
cool.
So.
Very good. I don't know if we have any
We've got everybody. Let's wrap
covered it all. Okay. All right. Like I said, the one great thing about RMUS again is not just that we just sell drones. Remember that we don't do that. Just behind me and all around me this is my office. This is my R&D office. We have, dozens of pieces of equipment, hundreds of batteries. I have the best techs in the world that help me get the information to you. So we're not just doing drone sales in a box. We are super helpful. Get a hold of us if you have any questions. It doesn't really matter where you bought it from, but I do have a great team. One of the more common questions I have is how much things cost. Not my job. I have 4 awesome sales guys that will get you the right and correct information to help you guys out. So definitely make sure that between our sales guys, our tech team, and our top end team, basically JT, Ryan Wood, myself, and Corey Kirkwood, we really appreciate this ability to help you out. We do have the education portal, $19.99 a month. I mean, holy cow, of information all day long. And as mentioned, Jace brought up the virtual training. So hopefully this was super helpful with understanding the M300. We plan on doing probably one more of these coming in the near future. Hopefully not much changes. So
There'll be a lot more live streaming coming in our future.
a lot more live streaming. So I think I had a great time. Jace, did you have a good time?
I had a good time.
Did good time. Jake, Lance, Ryan. Oh yeah, we had a great time. So again, thank you guys. We really appreciate